Precept and Practice. John of Lovedale was an exceptionally good man, polished in manners, spruce in habiliments, tidy in upkeep, and trim in his transactions with others. He was honored and respected everywhere. Blessed with a moderate intelligence, he could speculate fairly easily and follow dexterously the trends of the bulls and bears in the stock exchange. Fortune smiled on him at the right time, and he found himself inheriting a decent property from a distant relative of his. This inheritance enabled him to establish a grocery shop of his own in a busy locality of Lovedale. The commodities he sold were of decent kind, and he, on his part, gave his customers rich satisfaction. For consumer service was his watchword. His business prospered, and this enabled him to buy off, in a lean period, a cozy apartment at a stone's throw from his thriving business shop, which teemed with activity all the time. Dull would be the life for any person if it has no ups and downs. Margaret was one of his customers. She had youth and pretty beauty, which had the simple charm and the delicate vigor of a wild flower. Immensely touched by the tenderness of the angelic Margaret, he began to woo her, and she too found in him a kindness surpassing all description. And so she reciprocated his love. So the wooing culminated in a wedding. This gave immense satisfaction to John. This happy-go-lucky John soon developed peculiar psychic trouble. This is how the trouble found its way into the mental structure of Jolly John. The day after he moved to his new apartment, he found, midway between his apartment and the business store, a poultry. Poultry was the one thing he did not like in life. He was allergic even to hear of a poultry. When even to hear that word was anathema and allergy to him, how could he be at peace with himself when he had to pass by the poultry every time he went up or down to his shop? One might well ask, what gave John the creeps in his lumber region? Well, it was the crowing of the cock in the poultry that sent him into tantrums of terrific unrest. Whenever he heard the cock-crow-coo of the cock, he felt as if he was a worm chased by the cock with his sharp beak. He was mortally afraid that the cock would peck at him and make a mincemeat of him. Try as he could, he was unable to overcome the sensation and the feeling that he was a worm. He had this feeling only when he thought of the cock. A lion or a tiger he could face bravely, but a hen or a cock was a monster striking death and disaster in the innermost core of his shivering self. Margaret, his lovesome wife, with whom he shared the joys of his life, soon discovered this peculiar slant in his behavior, and with many a kind word of advice, tried to bring sense into his mind that the cock was far smaller in size and stature than his own self, and hence it did not have even a ghost of a chance to peck at him, much less to tear him to pieces. But just as certain sentiments develop roots in one's personality and are hard to eradicate, so too this feeling that he was a worm in the presence of the cock took strong hold of his mind and was eating his mind gradually. He grew thin and lanky. A famished look began permanently to inhabit his face. He lost all appetite for life. Margaret, pitying her husband's condition, soon convinced him that he should consult a psychiatrist. A day was fixed, And the day did come when John was moved to the famous medical complex in the heart of Lovedale, where the psychiatrist had with him the latest gadgets with which he could unearth and apprehend even the most subtle tendencies lying deep down in the abysmal depths of the subtle unconsciousness. Margaret, too, entrusting the charge of running their shop to her sister, went with her husband to be a tower of strength to him when he was to be examined by the team of psychiatrists. The examination was a tedious one involving several tests. The last test was of a subtle kind, where John was sent into a state of suspended animation. John was lying prostrate on the bed. A bright ray of light was focused on the layers of his brain. Moving a sharp needle smoothly over the layers of the brain, the psychiatrist, in a dreamy voice, began addressing John. John, too, responded in a voice which appeared to come from a grave. The doctor was satisfied with the test. He had diagnosed the disease correctly. He started treating the patient with the right medicines. In 3 days, John was cured of his complaint. He felt all right. Now he was full of confidence that he was not a worm and that the cock could do nothing to him. The next day he was discharged. John was all smiles that day. Margaret was in all bloom. The two appeared like a happy couple who had just then walked out of the Garden of Eden. Paying all the bills, thanking the doctors profusely, the two came out happily, humming a happy tune. That being a pleasant day, a sunny morning, with all the pleasantness of spring, they decided to walk the distance between the hospital and their apartment. They had hardly gone a couple of 100 meters when a cock somewhere in the locality, for no reason, began to crow, "Cook-crow-coo," at that odd hour. This crowing of the cock stung John to the quick, and without even telling Margaret, he ran so fast back to the hospital that had sprinters' race held then, he would have hit the tape first. Margaret, who least expected such a thing to happen, ran after John to the hospital. When she reached the hospital, she could hear John asking the very psychiatrist who had treated him, "Doctor, I know you very well, and I know that I am not a worm to be pegged at by the cock. But does the cock know I am not a worm? What would happen to me if she should still think that I am a worm?" The psychiatrist and Margaret were flabbergasted. It was at that juncture that I left the 3 of them in the hospital, 2 of them with mouths opened wide, eyes bulging out, a picture of dismay staring at John. Though John's condition is funny, most of us in this world are no better than John. Knowledge we have accumulated in plenty, but when it is a question of using it in a situation, we find that this knowledge leaves us high and dry. However much one may read and understand anything, if it is not assimilated into one's own personality to become a deep-rooted conviction in oneself, that individual's condition is no better than John's. Thank you.